Okay, story number 12. Can Chinese rule of law attract financial liquidity? This is number one story in culture.
My guess is no, not in its current form.
Right.
I think Mr. Xi recognizes, and probably a lot of the party leadership there recognizes, that they can't go on as they are precisely because nobody trusts them. In fact, I have a friend that's told me that in Indonesia they would probably trust the Russians before they trust the Chinese.
Wow, that's saying a lot.
That's saying a lot. I think this goes back to what we were talking about last time with the culture agenda. I think is coming down the pike in China. They have to create a different kind of culture that has some moral basis, that's not rooted in party ideology, that is something that, can take hold of the average Chinese. I think that's what they're confronted with, and I think that's what they're going to try and do somehow. I don't know exactly how. But I don't see it happening now because really there is no rule of law. What you have is essentially an very unrepresentative government that is ruled by decree rather than ruled by law. It's ruled by ideology rather than ruled by law. That never works. That's really why people don't trust the Chinese. Is it rule of law? Well, no, it isn't.
Very interesting. When I was in Hong Kong, the message was if we got rid of the estate tax, a lot of money was going to be coming this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because they're looking for a safe haven.
Right.
And I think that's one of the reasons there was such an attack by the Americans on Switzerland and the other safe havens.
Yes.
America's trying to make itself out to be the safe haven of choice, and the reality of our rule of law at this point leaves a lot to be desired compared to Switzerland.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Switzerland, speaking of Switzerland, I think I sent you that story that there is a movement now in Switzerland to nationalize the money lending power and just take it away from the banks altogether.
Right. So they had the referendum that lost last week, but just getting it on the ball. Put the fear of God into a lot of people, and I think it's a message to the central bank and the banks.
Yeah.
No more funny business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And China's going to have to do the same thing. And I think the other reason that you have this fundamental lack of trust in them is precisely their finances, their financial institutions. They're kind of playing fast and loose, as we know.
Well, The Economist has really been hitting hard on the China as a surveillance state, and I think one reason may be the Anglo-American Alliance wants to make sure it holds that brand as the premier rule of law in the financial liquidity world. Mm-hmm. But I think China is a police state.
Well, it is, obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're a police state too, but we're just pretending we're not.
Right.
And that bodes some long-term problems for us as well. And we're losing trust right and left too. So, but in China's case, you've got the whole history of the communist movement in that country that's standing against them. And they know that. And that's why I think there's some sort of fundamental change that's going to come down the pike. But it's going to be long-term.
Well, back to you heard it here first. I remember a couple years ago when you just insisted that I understand the role of culture and where this was going. Mm-hmm. And I didn't begin to understand it anyway the way you did. You really focused me on it, and everything you said has all come to pass.
How so?
In that this is where the competition is coming down to, and this is where all the key financial centers are falling down on the job.
Yeah.
And they're feeling the tension of how do you keep the cash flows going but return virtue to the process.
Right.
And the reality is the people who stole all the money really can't return virtue to the process.
Well, they can't do it because it's partly a cultural phenomenon. In some cases, I just don't think they've even been exposed to the idea of virtue.
Right.
You've got a whole class of financial narcissists as well. But, everybody is saying that all of these, Trump's election, Conte in Italy, Kurz in Austria, Wilders in the Netherlands, Le Pen in France, that these are populist revolts. They're not populist revolts. They're cultural revolts.
Right.
And until people wake up and understand that, they're not going to understand the phenomenon. And I think the revolts are visceral. In other words, I don't think people are there may be some that are consciously focused on the idea. They're fighting to be able to listen to Beethoven without paying a jizya, Sharia law tax, stuff
Right.
like that. But I'm hoping that will change, because if people wake up to the fact that it's the culture that's under assault from their own domestic political leadership and financial class and the policies they're pursuing, the better off they'll be.